The three sons of Akrid cast long purple shadows across the Hall of Decisions as Ambassador Zixvoral walked with perfect posture toward the High Council chambers. His blue skin shimmered slightly under the formal diplomat robes, their silvery fabric marking him as one of the most respected representatives of the Akridian Confederation. Zixvoral felt nothing as he approached the massive stone doors. Feeling was not the Akridian way. His species had evolved beyond primitive emotional responses thousands of years ago. They now prided themselves on pure logic and rational thought. It was this perfect logical thinking that had helped their civilization advance far beyond most others in the galaxy. The doors slid open without a sound. Inside, 7 council elders sat in a half-circle, their aged blue faces showing no expression. This emergency meeting was unusual. Zixvoral had been called back from an important trade mission with the silicon-based lifeforms of Regus IV for this meeting. "Ambassador Zixvoral," said Head Elder Mav, her voice flat and even. "Your record of service spans 82 successful diplomatic missions. Your logical capabilities rank in the highest percentile of all living Akridians." Zixvoral bowed slightly. "I serve the logical advancement of our people," he said, using the traditional response. Elder Mav nodded. "We have a mission of unprecedented importance, one that may decide the future of our species." The center of the room lit up with a hologram showing a blue-green planet. Zixvoral recognized it immediately from his studies. "Earth," he said. "Yes," confirmed Elder Trek, the Security Council representative. 3 orbital cycles ago, our deep space monitors detected radio signals from this system. The beings there, who call themselves humans, have achieved basic interstellar communication capabilities. Zixvoral studied the slowly rotating hologram. "Their technological development is remarkably rapid for an emotional species," he observed. "Indeed," said Elder Lox, the Science Council representative. "They have advanced from primitive combustion engines to basic space travel in less than 200 years. Our models cannot explain such progress from beings who make decisions based on feelings rather than logic." The hologram changed to show images of humans. Zixvoral found their appearance strange, their pink-beige skin, their odd fur growing only on specific parts of their bodies, their highly mobile facial features constantly changing position. "As you know," Elder Mav continued, "the Vorax Empire continues to expand toward our space. Our calculations show we cannot withstand their military might alone. We require allies." "And you believe these humans could be such allies?" Zixvoral asked, his voice containing the slight lilt that was the only permitted indication of surprise in Akridian society. Elder Trek touched her control panel, and the hologram shifted to show primitive human spacecraft and weapons. Despite their technological inferiority, humans show remarkable adaptability and unpredictability in conflict situations. The Vorax, like us, rely on logical battle algorithms. Human unpredictability could provide a tactical advantage. Zixvoral processed this information carefully. "What would my mission parameters be?" "You will be the first official Akridian envoy to Earth," said Elder Mav. "You will establish diplomatic relations, assess their potential as allies, and begin negotiations for a mutual defense agreement. We are prepared to offer limited technological exchange." The assignment was logical. Zixvoral was the obvious choice with his experience in first contact situations. Yet something about the way the elders exchanged quick glances suggested there was more to this mission. "Has there been previous contact with Earth?" he asked. A brief silence filled the chamber before Elder Trek responded. "We sent 3 unofficial observers to Earth over the past decade. Their mission was simple observation and data collection." "And their reports?" Zixvoral asked. Another uncomfortable silence. Finally, Elder Lox spoke. "Their reports became increasingly problematic over time. All 3 observers had to be extracted before their scheduled completion dates." Zixvoral processed this unusual information. "Define problematic," he requested. Elder Mav's voice became even more controlled than usual. The observers began showing signs of emotional contamination. They started using irrational language, making illogical requests, and questioning established Akridian values. This was deeply concerning. Acridians prided themselves on being immune to emotional influence. Their evolutionary path had led them away from the chaos of feelings toward the perfect clarity of pure logic. Were they able to be rehabilitated? Zixavoral asked. 2 are still undergoing treatment, Elder Trek said quietly. The 3rd chose self-termination rather than continue rehabilitation. The room fell silent. Self-termination was almost unheard of in Acridian society. It was the most illogical choice possible. I understand your concerns, Zixavoral said finally. But I assure the Council my psychological evaluations show the strongest emotional barriers in the diplomatic corps. I will not be affected. Elder. Mav nodded slowly. That is precisely why you were selected, Ambassador. Your record shows not a single instance of emotional decision-making in 60 years of service. The hologram shifted again, showing a space station orbiting Earth. You will first spend time at their orbital diplomatic facility, Elder Trek explained. This will allow for gradual exposure to human culture while limiting contact. If that phase is successful, limited planetary visits may be authorized. Zixavoral committed the details to memory as the Council provided him with mission specifications, negotiation parameters, and security protocols. After the formal briefing, Elder Trek asked to speak with him privately. She was his former mentor, and the closest thing an Acridian could have to a friend, though they would never use such an emotional term. Zix, she said, using his shortened name in a rare breach of formality. I must emphasize the danger here. These humans, she paused, searching for words. They affect others in ways our science cannot fully explain. I have reviewed the observer reports, Zixavoral assured her. Their emotional shields were far less developed than mine. Elder Trek's eyes fixed on his. The 3rd observer, the one who self-terminated, it was Vexler. Zixavoral could not prevent the slight widening of his eyes. Vexler had been the most promising logical thinker of his generation, with emotional control even stronger than Zixavoral's own. Remember your training, Elder Trek cautioned. Humans are unpredictable and potentially dangerous. Maintain your distance emotionally, complete your mission, and return unchanged. 2 weeks later, Zixavoral stood on the observation deck of the Starship Logical Path as it prepared to leave Acridian space. The ship would take 6 months to reach Earth, even with advanced propulsion technology. He would spend the journey studying everything known about humans. As the 3 suns of his homeworld faded to tiny points of light behind him, Zixavoral felt absolute certainty in his mission. He would succeed where others had failed. He would remain untouched by human emotional contamination. He had no way of knowing that his fundamental understanding of existence was about to be challenged in ways no Acridian could prepare for. The Earth orbital diplomatic station hung like a silver wheel against the blue-white backdrop of the planet below. After 6 months in space, Zixavoral stood perfectly still in the airlock of his ship. His blue fingers moved rapidly over his wrist computer, recording his first observations. Oxygen content 21.3%, he noted aloud. Gravity set to Earth standard, temperature 22 degrees Celsius. The facts comforted him. Facts were reliable. Facts were Acridian. The airlock door slid open, and Zixavoral experienced his first surprise. 3 humans waited for him, and they were moving constantly. Their faces changed shapes. Their bodies shifted position. His studies had not prepared him for how restless humans appeared in person. A tall male human with light skin and short brown hair stepped forward. Ambassador, Zixavoral, welcome to Earth Station 1. I'm Frank Winters, lead diplomatic envoy. His face stretched at the lower half, showing white teeth. Zixavoral recognized this as a smile, a human expression meant to indicate friendliness rather than aggression, despite the showing of teeth. He noted with satisfaction that his cultural briefings were useful. This is Lisa Martinez, our cultural specialist, Frank continued, gesturing to a female human with darker skin and long black hair. It's a pleasure to meet you, Ambassador, said Lisa. Her voice had more sound variation than Frank's, what humans called tone. She extended her hand toward him. Zixavoral stared at the offered hand. He knew humans expected him to grasp it, a custom called a handshake. The idea of touching an unknown alien seemed highly unsanitary and illogical to him. But he had studied the protocol. With slight hesitation, he extended his blue three-fingered hand and allowed Lisa to grasp it. "And this is Alan Dawson, head of station security," Frank said, pointing to a broad-shouldered male with dark skin. Alan nodded sharply. "Ambassador, your quarters are prepared and secured according to the specifications your government provided." Zix Voral approved of Alan's direct approach. It was the most Acridian-like behavior he had observed so far. "I will inspect them," Zix Voral said, keeping his voice flat as was proper for an Acridian. As they walked through the station corridors, Zix Voral was overwhelmed by stimuli. Humans passed by, all talking loudly, their faces constantly changing expression. Some stopped to stare at him. One small human pointed directly at him and made a high-pitched sound that hurt his hearing receptors. "Sorry about that," Lisa said, noticing his discomfort. "Many of our staff have brought their families to the station, and the children are excited to see their first alien diplomat." "Children," Zix Voral repeated. He had studied human reproduction, but found the concept of childhood strange. Acridians emerged from their growth chambers as fully functioning adults with downloaded knowledge bases. The inefficiency of human development was puzzling. His quarters were acceptable, a simple room with minimal decoration. Most importantly, it had a decontamination chamber where he could purify himself after human contact. "We'll let you settle in," Frank said. "The formal welcome dinner is at 1900 hours. Lisa will come to escort you." When they left, Zix Voral immediately used the decontamination chamber, then sat in the center of the room to process his initial observations. The humans were even more chaotic than he had been warned. Their movements seemed random, their speech patterns irregular. How had such disorganized beings advanced so quickly? Later, Lisa arrived to escort him to the dinner, another strange human concept. Acridians absorbed nutrients through their skin from nutrient baths twice per month. The human practice of placing organic matter in their body cavities, multiple times daily, seemed incredibly primitive. The dining hall was loud, filled with sounds Zix Voral could barely process. Humans sat around tables, putting food in their mouths, making noises his translator identified as laughter. "I've arranged for a special dietary option for you," Lisa explained, leading him to a table where Frank and Alan already sat. "It's a nutrient solution you can dip your hands into. Our scientists worked with your ship's database to create it." Zix Voral was surprised by this consideration. It was logical, yet somehow more than that. As they sat, Frank began explaining. "Human customs. When we eat together, we usually engage in what we call small talk, casual conversation to build relationships." Zix Voral blinked slowly. "What purpose does this serve in diplomatic negotiations?" The humans exchanged glances. "Well," Frank said, "it helps us get to know each other as people, not just representatives." "I do not understand. My title is ambassador. I am not a separate entity from my function." Lisa leaned forward. "Humans separate their professional roles from their personal identities. We believe knowing each other as individuals helps build trust. Trust is established through logical demonstration of reliability, not personal knowledge," Zix Voral countered. "For humans, both are important," Frank said, making the teeth showing expression again. The next day they held their first formal diplomatic meeting. Zix Voral presented the Acridian terms, technological exchange, primarily defense systems, in return for a military alliance against the Vorax. "These terms seem one-sided," Frank said after reviewing them. "Before discussing technology transfers, we need to establish shared values and principles." Zix Voral tilted his head. "I do not understand. We are offering technology far beyond your current capabilities." "Technology without shared understanding can lead to misuse," Frank explained. "We need to know your intentions, your ethics, your views on individual rights." This was not in Zix Voral's mission parameters. The Council had assured him humans would eagerly accept any technology offered. Their hesitation was illogical. On The third day, alarms suddenly blared throughout the station. Zixvoral's quarters shook. "Ambassador." Alan's voice came through the communication system. "Please remain in your quarters. We have a containment breach in Sector 7. Zixvoral ignored this instruction. His mission was too important to risk. He opened his door and moved toward the command center. When he arrived, he saw Alan putting on what appeared to be a protective suit. "What are you doing?" Zixvoral asked. Alan looked surprised. "Ambassador, you should be in your quarters. There's been a breach in the botanical laboratory. The air filtration system is failing. You appear to be preparing to enter the damaged section," Zixvoral observed. "Lisa's orchids are in there, rare specimens from Earth. They'll die without intervention and they're irreplaceable." Zixvoral processed this. "You are risking your safety for plants with no strategic value?" "They're important to Lisa," Alan said simply, sealing his helmet. "She spent years cultivating them." Before Zixvoral could respond, Alan had entered the airlock. Through the window, the Acridian watched as the human worked quickly to move the plants to a portable containment unit, even as warning lights flashed around him. When Alan returned, removing his helmet and coughing, Zixvoral approached him. "Your actions were highly illogical. The risk-to-benefit calculation does not justify what you did." Alan wiped sweat from his face. "Some things are worth the risk." Later, when Lisa thanked Alan with moisture leaking from her eyes, tears Zixvoral's database supplied, and an unusual shaking in her voice, the Acridian felt something strange within himself. It was not logical. It was not Acridian. It was the first tremor in his perfectly ordered world. Earth's atmosphere contains 17 pollutants at levels Acridians consider hazardous, Zixvoral noted as he stared out the shuttle window at the blue planet growing larger below them. "My environmental suit should provide adequate protection. Beside, Lisa Martinez smiled. I promise the air won't hurt you. Millions of humans breathe it every day. Humans have evolved within these conditions." "I have not," Zixvoral replied, adjusting the settings on his wrist computer. After 6 weeks on the orbital station, the Acridian High Council had finally approved Zixvoral's request to visit Earth's surface. His reports had been thorough and logical, but something was missing. He could not understand human decision-making without observing them in their natural habitat. The shuttle landed smoothly at a private airfield outside of Washington, D.C. When the door opened, Zixvoral was immediately struck by sensations his briefings had not prepared him for. The air moved against his skin even through his thin protective suit. Sounds came from all directions: birds, distant vehicles, the rustling of plant life. A human male approached the shuttle, walking with a confident stride. "Ambassador Zixvoral, welcome to Earth. I'm Paul Henderson from the State Department." He did not extend his hand, showing he had been briefed on Acridian preferences. Zixvoral nodded in acknowledgement. "Your consideration of my biological concerns is noted and appreciated." Paul laughed, a sound Zixvoral still found jarring. "Lisa sent us a 20-page document on Acridian customs. I stayed up all night reading it. A vehicle transported them through the city." Zixvoral watched the human settlement pass by his window. So chaotic, with buildings of different sizes and shapes, unlike the perfect geometric precision of Acridian cities. So many humans moved in all directions, with no apparent pattern to their movements. "As discussed in our preliminary arrangements," Paul explained, "you'll be staying with my family as part of our cultural exchange program. We have prepared a private space with air filtration according to your specifications." "Staying with your family unit?" Zixvoral questioned. This had not been in his briefing. "Yes, my wife Olivia and our children Daniel and Grace. They're very excited to meet you." Zixvoral's posture became even more rigid. "I was not informed that immature humans would be present." Paul looked concerned. "Is that a problem? We can arrange alternative accommodations if needed." Zixvoral quickly calculated the diplomatic implications of refusing this arrangement. "No, the study of human offspring may provide valuable insights for my mission." The house was modest by Acridian standards, a two-story structure with unnecessary decorative elements on the exterior. As they approached, the front door opened and a female human appeared, flanked by two smaller humans. "Ambassador, this is my wife, Olivia," Paul said. Olivia's face displayed the human expression of welcome, raised corners of the mouth, crinkled eyes. "We're honored to have you stay with us," she said, her voice warm. The smallest human suddenly darted forward. "Are you really blue all over? Can I see your spaceship? How many hearts do you have?" The questions came so rapidly that Zixvaral's translator struggled to keep up. "Daniel," Olivia said sharply, "remember what we discussed about giving our guest space?" "It is acceptable," Zixvaral said, studying the small human with scientific interest. "I have 3 circulatory organs, not hearts as you understand them. My vessel remains in orbit. And yes, my epidermis is blue throughout." The older young human, who stood partially behind her mother, finally spoke. "I'm Grace," she said quietly. "Dad said you're a diplomat. We learned about diplomacy in school last month." Zixvaral noticed her voice had less volume but more complexity than her brother's. "Yes, I represent the Acridian Confederation in official capacity." Inside, the house was filled with objects Zixvaral could not identify. Soft furniture, decorative, items with no apparent function, and flat surfaces covered with images of the Henderson humans at various stages of development. Paul showed him to a room on the ground floor. "We've installed the air filtration system here and the bathroom is private. If you need anything, just ask." After they left him alone, Zixvaral sent a brief update to his superiors, then began scanning the room for surveillance devices. Finding none, he removed his protective suit and performed a brief purification ritual. The first days passed with Zixvaral making careful observations. He noted how the family members interacted, touching frequently, raising their voices in what his translator called laughter many times per day, and engaging in activities with no apparent productive purpose. On the 4th day, Daniel invited Zixvaral to watch him play in the backyard. The Acridian stood stiffly on the wooden deck as the child ran in circles, kicked a ball, and climbed a structure made of wood and metal. "Do you want to try the swing?" Daniel called out, pointing to a seat hanging from 2 chains. "What is its function?" Zixvaral asked. "It's fun," Daniel said, as if this explained everything. Before Zixvaral could decline, Daniel fell from the climbing structure. The sound of the impact was followed by a high-pitched cry that made Zixvaral's auditory receptors vibrate uncomfortably. Olivia rushed from the house, followed by Paul. They knelt beside Daniel, examining his knee, which was leaking red human blood. "It's okay, buddy," Paul said, his voice softer than Zixvaral had heard before. "Just a scrape." Olivia held the child against her chest, rocking slightly. "You're being so brave." Zixvaral watched, fascinated by their response. On Acrid, an injured individual would be quickly taken for medical treatment. There would be no physical contact, no soft words. Those served no logical purpose in healing. Yet, as he observed, he noticed Daniel's cries diminished as his parents held him. His breathing stabilized. The approach appeared to have actual physiological benefits. That evening, Grace found Zixvaral in the living room studying a map of Earth. "Would you like to hear some music?" she asked. "I am familiar with the concept," Zixvaral replied. "Organized sound patterns for cultural purposes." Grace smiled. "It's a little more than that." She touched a device, and suddenly the room filled with sound. Zixvaral had expected noise, but what filled his hearing receptors was something else. Multiple instruments created patterns that shifted and flowed. A human voice rose and fell over the instruments, conveying something his translator couldn't capture. "This is a symphony," Grace explained. "The composer wrote it almost 200 years ago." "You preserve sound patterns for centuries?" Zixvaral asked, genuinely surprised. "Some music has been played for over 1,000 years," Grace said. "It still makes us feel something." As Zixvaral listened, an unusual sensation spread through his body. It was not logical. It was not something he could record in his official report. But for 4.3 minutes, he forgot he was an ambassador. He forgot his mission. He simply existed within the sound. 2 nights later, Zixvorl woke to a loud crashing sound. Light flashed through his window, followed by a rumbling that shook the house. His body instinctively curled into a defensive position. His door opened, and Olivia stood there. "It's just a thunderstorm," she said gently. "Are there no storms on your planet?" "Akrid has minimal weather variations," Zixvorl said, embarrassed by his reaction. "An Akridian should not show fear." Another flash lit the room, followed by a louder crash. Zixvorl could not prevent his body from flinching. Olivia sat on the edge of his bed, a boundary no human had crossed before. "The first thunder after winter always startles me too," she said, not mocking him, not judging. She stayed, explaining the weather patterns that created storms until Zixvorl's heart rates returned to normal. Her presence was comforting, a concept he had never applied to himself before. That night, as he prepared his daily report to the High Council, Zixvorl paused. How could he explain what he had experienced? How the Henderson family's emotional bonds seemed to strengthen, rather than weaken them? How music had made him feel connected to something beyond logic? How Olivia's kindness during the storm had affected him? He sent a brief factual report instead, omitting his confusing new observations. But as he lay in the darkness, listening to the rain, Zixvorl knew something was changing within him, something that both frightened and fascinated him. Zixvorl stood in the backyard of the Henderson home, holding the strange object Daniel had given him. A diamond-shaped frame with thin material stretched across it. "A kite," Daniel called it. "You have to run with it," Daniel explained, demonstrating, by jogging a few steps. "The wind catches it and makes it fly." After 3 months on Earth, Zixvorl had adapted to many human customs, but this activity seemed particularly pointless. Still, he had promised to try. He began to move forward awkwardly, holding the kite above his head. "Faster," Daniel encouraged. Zixvorl increased his speed, feeling the air resistance pull on the kite. Suddenly, a gust of wind lifted it from his hands. The string unwound rapidly from the spool he held. "Let it out more," Daniel called. "But don't let go of the string." The kite climbed higher, dancing in the currents of air. Zixvorl felt an unexpected sensation in his chest cavity. The sight of the small object floating far above him, connected only by the thin string in his hand, created a feeling he could not name. "You're doing it," Daniel shouted, his face showing what Zixvorl now recognized as joy. Later that afternoon, as Zixvorl sat on the deck watching the humans prepare their evening meal, his wrist communicator vibrated. A priority message from the Akridian High Council. He excused himself and returned to his room, activating the secure channel. Elder Trek's face appeared on the small holographic display. "Ambassador," she said, her voice flat in the traditional Akridian manner. But Zixvorl, now more attuned to subtle vocal variations, detected unusual tension. "Elder Trek, I was not scheduled for communication until next week." "The situation has changed," she said. "Our deep space monitors have detected a Vorax scout vessel entering the Sol system. Trajectory analysis indicates it will reach Earth orbit in approximately 14 Earth days." Zixvorl felt his body temperature drop. "A scout or an attack force?" "Scout class, but heavily armed. It appears to be on a reconnaissance mission." "I should inform the human authorities immediately," Zixvorl said. "They will need to prepare. Defensive." "No," Elder Trek interrupted. "The High Council has made its decision. You are to withdraw from Earth immediately, using diplomatic consultation as your explanation. You will bring all technological data you have gathered and return to Akrid." Zixvorl blinked slowly, his species equivalent of a surprised expression. "Leave without warning them? The Vorax will easily overcome Earth's defenses without preparation." "That is not our concern," Elder Trek said. "The Council has determined that Earth cannot be a suitable ally. Your reports indicate their technology remains primitive, and their decision-making is too unpredictable." But their unpredictability could be valuable against the Vorax, Zixvoral argued, surprising himself with his directness. Elder Trek's eyes narrowed. Your tone suggests emotional contamination, Ambassador. The decision is final. Your extraction vessel will arrive in 3 Earth days. Be prepared for immediate departure. The communication ended, leaving Zixvoral staring at the empty air where the hologram had been. For the first time in his life, he felt torn between duty and something else. Logic dictated he follow orders. The Acridian Confederation came first. Earth's fate was not his concern, but images flashed through his mind. Daniel teaching him to fly the kite with patient enthusiasm. Grace explaining poetry, line by line until he began to grasp its non-literal meanings. Olivia sitting beside him during the thunderstorm, her presence somehow making the loud noises less frightening. And there was something else, something the Acridian Council did. Not know. In their diplomatic meetings, Zixvoral had observed Frank Winters negotiating with intelligence and principle. What initially seemed like inefficiency was actually careful consideration of long-term consequences. What appeared to be emotional weakness was actually a strong moral framework. Could he really leave them to face the Vorax unprepared? That evening, Zixvoral sat with the Henderson family for dinner, his mind far away. He barely noticed when Paul asked him a question, until Olivia gently touched his arm. Ambassador, are you feeling well? Zixvoral looked up to see 4 human faces watching him with concern. I apologize. I received troubling news from my government today. Is there anything we can do to help? Paul asked. The simple offer of assistance broke something inside Zixvoral. The Acridian diplomat made a decision that would have been unthinkable 3 months ago. I need to speak with Lisa Martinez and Frank Winters immediately, he said. It is a matter of great urgency. 2 hours later, Zixvoral sat in a secure room at the State Department. Lisa, Frank, and Major Nicole Bennett from the United States Space Force listened intently as he explained about the approaching Vorax vessel. Let me understand this correctly, Frank said when Zixvoral finished. Your government has ordered you to leave Earth without warning us about this threat? Yes, Zixvoral admitted. The High Council believes Earth would not be a valuable ally. They have decided to focus on their own defenses. And you're telling us anyway, Lisa said softly. Thank you. Instead of anger or betrayal, Zixvoral saw gratitude in her expression. This was not how Acridians would respond to such news. How much time do we have? Major Bennett asked, already making notes on her tablet. The vessel will reach Earth orbit in approximately 14 days. My extraction ship arrives in 3 days. Will you return to Acrid as ordered? Frank asked. Zixvoral hesitated. My duty is to my people. Of course, Frank nodded. But we need your help to prepare for this threat. Could you delay your departure even by a few days? Major Bennett leaned forward. Ambassador, what can you tell us about Vorax technology and tactical approaches? For the next several hours, Zixvoral shared everything he knew about the Vorax, their ship designs, weapons capabilities, and battle strategies. The humans asked intelligent questions, quickly grasping key vulnerabilities. Their combat algorithms are similar to Acridian systems, Zixvoral explained. They rely on logical prediction models, which is why unpredictability could work against them, Major Bennett said, her eyes lighting up. If we can't match their firepower, we can confuse their targeting systems with random flight patterns. To Zixvoral's surprise, the humans did not panic. They formulated a plan that combined Earth's existing satellite defenses with tactics designed to exploit Vorax weaknesses. Their approach was creative, adaptive, and unlike anything the Acridian military would have considered. Will it be enough? Lisa asked as their meeting concluded near dawn. I do not know, Zixvoral answered honestly, but the plan has a 34% higher probability of success than I initially calculated. As he left the building with Lisa, the eastern sky was beginning to lighten. What will your government do when they discover you warned us? She asked. I will face consequences, Zixvoral said simply. Disobeying direct orders is unprecedented. For an Acridian. Lisa stopped walking and turned to face him. Why did you do it then? Zixaveral looked at the rising sun, struggling to explain what he himself didn't fully understand. 3 months ago, I would have followed orders without question. But now, I could not leave knowing what would happen. That sounds like empathy, Lisa said with a small smile. Perhaps, Zixaveral admitted. If so, it is a strange feeling. When his extraction vessel arrived 3 days later, Zixaveral faced the most difficult decision of his life: obey his orders and return to Acrid, or stay and help the humans defend against a threat he had brought to their doorstep. The choice he made would change 2 worlds forever. Zixaveral stood in the Henderson family's living room, surrounded by humans who had become far more than diplomatic contacts. The extraction vessel waited in orbit. His time on Earth was over. "You're really leaving?" Daniel asked, his young voice breaking slightly. "I must return to my world," Zixaveral said. He had made his choice. After helping the humans prepare their defenses against the Vorax scout, he would follow his orders to return, but he would not abandon them entirely. "Will you come back?" Grace asked, holding a book of poetry they had been studying together. Zixaveral hesitated. No Acridian had ever felt regret about leaving a diplomatic post before. "I do not know." Olivia stepped forward and, breaking all Acridian protocols, hugged him. Months ago, he would have recoiled from such contact. Now, he found himself returning, the gesture awkwardly. "Thank you for warning us," Paul said, extending his hand for a final handshake. "You risked a lot to help us." At the official farewell ceremony, Frank, Lisa, and Major Bennett presented him with a small wooden box. "A token of Earth's gratitude," Frank explained. Inside was a simple gift: a small model of the kite he had flown with Daniel, and a data crystal containing recordings of the music Grace had shared with him. As his shuttle rose toward his waiting ship, Zixaveral watched Earth grow smaller. Something inside him felt strangely hollow. The Acridians had no word for this feeling. The humans called it missing someone. 6 weeks later, Zixaveral's ship entered Acridian space. The 3 suns of his homeworld shone just as he remembered, but somehow they seemed less vibrant than before. The landing platform was crowded with officials. No welcoming committee. This was not a celebration. Zixaveral had sent his full report ahead, including his decision to warn the humans about the Vorax. He expected consequences. Elder Trek met him at the bottom of the ramp. "The High Council awaits," she said, her voice even more controlled than usual. In the Hall of Decisions, Zixaveral faced the 7 elders. Their blue faces showed no expression, but he could now recognize the subtle signs of their disapproval. The slight angle of their head crests, the positioning of their hands. "Ambassador Zixaveral," Elder Mav said, "you have violated direct orders from this council. You revealed classified information to the humans. You assisted them against the Vorax. Explain your actions." 6 months ago, Zixaveral would have had no answer. Now, he stood straighter. The decision was logical, but not in the way we traditionally define logic. The elders exchanged glances. "I discovered something on Earth," Zixaveral continued. "What we dismiss as emotional weakness is actually a different form of intelligence. Humans use empathy to build connections that strengthen their collective functioning. You have been contaminated," Elder Locke stated. "No," Zixaveral replied. "I have been completed." The room fell silent. No Acridian had ever contradicted an elder so directly. "The human capacity for emotional connection is not primitive," Zixaveral explained. "It allows them to understand each other in ways we cannot. It drives them to protect each other, to create art, to advance despite their technological limitations. These are the ravings of a compromised mind," one elder said. But Elder Trek had been watching Zixaveral closely. Now she stood. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "we should consider another possibility." All eyes turned to her. "The observer who self-terminated," she continued. "Vexler was my student as Zixaveral was. Before his death, he said something similar, that we were incomplete, not superior." "You concealed this?" Elder Mav asked, sharply. I believed it was contamination, Elder Trek admitted, but seeing Zixvoral now, hearing the same conclusions from our most logical diplomat, perhaps we have been wrong. The debate raged for days. Some elders called for Zixvoral's permanent quarantine. Others, curious about his transformation, argued for further study of human emotional intelligence. Reports came in of the human victory over the Vorax scout, impossible by Acridian calculations, yet achieved through unpredictable tactics. Eventually, a compromise was reached. Zixvoral would not be punished, but would instead establish a new training program for future diplomats, one that incorporated both logical analysis and the emotional intelligence he had learned from humans. 1 year later, Zixvoral stood before his first class of Acridian diplomatic students. On his desk sat the small wooden kite model from Earth. Logic alone is not enough, he told them. To understand other species, we must be open to new ways of experiencing the universe. As he described his time with the Henderson family, with Frank, Lisa, and Alan, he realized he had become a bridge between two worlds, forever changed, but in ways that made both him and his civilization stronger. The end.